Good afternoon, and thanks for tuning in to the American Digital Network for an all-new episode of American Roundball. And to talk women's hoops with us, we have our expert here in the studio via Skype, Monica McNutt. Monica, right off the bat, I know we have some huge non-conference wins to talk about from last week, but for USF, they were able to knock off number 13 Ohio State. How impressed were you with the Bulls' performance last week?
Well, first, Haley, as you are my outstanding witness, I called this one, right? just dirt off my shoulders. I will admit, though, I did not expect the Bulls to do it in this dominant fashion. When you look at the box score from that game, they were dominant in just about every category outside of turnovers, and there was only a 3 turnover difference there. And they shot 46% from the field, 50% from 3, and 100% from the three-point line. But the story of that game absolutely has to be Kitty Alox, who went off for 41 points. I mean, anytime your leading scorer, your go-to player, your leader is going off like that, you have to continue to feed her. But right alongside her, I think Maria Jespersen had a fantastic game. She pitched in with a double-double. Now, if I had to find something to be picky about, I would be concerned about the lack of balanced scoring, I would say, moving forward for the Bulls. But on the other hand, you could just as easily counter that thought process as you go with the hot hand and you don't stop until they're not hot. And Laxa clearly had it going all game long. Moving forward, though, I do expect them to have a little bit more balanced scoring. Typically, I do expect them to handle their business through conference play outside of their final game, which is a matchup with the Huskies.
Great win for USF. And meanwhile, top-ranked UConn continues to roll. We're going to talk about their marquee victory in just a second, but I think it would be appropriate to give Chris Daly some love, their associate head coach. She's been by Gino Auriemma's side for 33 seasons, and on Monday night, it was announced that she was selected to be inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame class for 2018. How well-deserved is this honor for Coach Daly?
I mean, 33 years, Haley. I mean, so often we see assistants from programs with so much success as UConn, well, similar amounts of success, we'll say, to UConn. They leave and they want to be the head coaches of their own programs. And that's not a knock against them at all. If they have a knack for leadership and want to take over a program, more power to them. But I think the loyalty of Chris Daly is very impressive. And I also think when you look at what the former players and current players and even Coach Auriemma have to say about her, she's a vital piece of the puzzle. I mean, Auriemma credited her when he was honored with his own Hall of Fame induction not too long ago. So she's been there for 1,016 wins, 33 years. I mean, this is like the yin and the yang in terms of what really makes the UConn Huskies go. And I love what she said to Holly Rowe post-game in terms of her award being representative of assistant coaches as a whole. Because often we don't necessarily hear about assistant coaches, but they are such a huge piece of the puzzle. And oftentimes they're the ones that truly foster those relationships with the players. Not that head coaches aren't, but there's a reason that you go to the assistant sometimes as opposed to hitting up your head coach with whatever your drama may be.
Yeah, it certainly appears that Chris Daly has an excellent relationship with her players out there on the court, and that seems to translate into the season that they're having as well. Big win for UConn on Monday night against number 4 Louisville. I know we were expecting a very competitive matchup, but what did you learn about the Huskies in this game towards the end of the season here?
Well, I think we continue to learn about the diversity of the Huskies. Yes, I think it's one thing when we say on paper, oh, Gino's got a ton of All-Americans, he's got talent. But when we see different players step up, when you see Katie Lou Samuelson go off for 26, or Gabby Williams chip in with another double-double, and Kia Nurse bring the defensive intensity that she did to open up the game, I mean, you continue to see that they are comfortable sharing the load, and it's never just one person. I think that game, in terms of the bigger picture, and Coach Auriemma said it post-game, it's about March for him, right? We don't want to necessarily already fill in the card because there's a reason that we play basketball. You never know what can happen. But let's just assume that UConn is able to maintain their dominance the rest of the way. March is what they play for. I mean, that's just the type of program that Auriemma and Coach Daly have established up in Storrs. So I think that that was a good win for them because, again, it's preparing them for March. I'm sure Coach Auriemma probably went over that fourth quarter tape in terms of allowing the Cardinals to pick up a little bit of momentum and begin to close that gap. But ultimately, the Huskies roll on.
Monica, let's take a look at the conference standings. There seems to be a battle for 4th place between Houston and Cincinnati. Why is it so imperative to lock in that 4th seed heading into the conference tournament?
Well, the conference tournament is all about being in the best position. And we know that those first 4 teams in the American this year will get a first round bye. And that is a huge advantage. I mean, not only do you get a chance to sit in the stands and rest your legs and watch your opponent play live scouting action, but you also get a little bit of a longer break. So that 4th spot is huge, especially if you're trying to jockey into position to get into the final matchup. I mean, we don't want to conclude, but we do conclude that UConn may win, but that automatic bye is still out there in terms of representing the conference. So you want to be one of those first 4 teams in. If you have to play in, it's not that it can't be done. I mean, we've seen it done in basketball. Teams come in, get hot. They argue that the rest is not good for their team. They'd rather keep playing and build some momentum. But I think late in the season, nobody ever complains about rest.
If you had to, I guess, gauge where both of these teams are at this point in the season, who do you think has the edge between Houston and Cincinnati?
Well, I'm giving the edge slightly to Cincinnati, Haley, and there's some very specific reasons in terms of why that is the case. When you look at Cincinnati, they're going to have to continue to share the ball. Over their past 2 victories, they've been able to score efficiently and get quite a few different players involved. In the close win against Wichita State, 9 players were in the scoring column. They were led by Nikira Goins, who had 26 in that game. Now, in the win over Tulane following that one, you got 4 players in double digits, and then you've got 10 players that were able to get into the scoring column. So they've matched the rebounding battle. They were even with Wichita State 35 all. I think they out-rebounded Tulane by 7. But rebounding for me is always a key when you look at conference play, and then being able to share the load, because it's one thing to game plan on your scouting report for 1, 2, and 3, maybe a 4th. But when you've got kids that can come in and make a difference, as we saw Amari Thomas do this week, I think it throws teams off a little bit in terms of their defensive plan. As for Houston, if they're going to claim that 4th spot, they've developed a dangerous trend to me. And the first line of the game recap speaks volumes on their website. It says the Houston Cougar women's basketball team fell just shy of their 9th second-half comeback of the season, dropping a tough 83-77 decision to Tulsa over the weekend. I'm concerned, Haley, in terms of this comeback mentality. The loss to Tulsa ended a 4-game winning streak for the Cougs, but prior to that, over that 4-game winning streak, 3 of those games included comebacks of 8 points or more. Now, I get it. You could argue that 8 points is just the ebb and flow of basketball. It's 3 possessions. We don't have to get into the nuance of the word comeback. But being down and having to mount a comeback in the 4th quarter, it takes more out of you. I get it. A win is a win, and Coach Huey should be proud of the resilience of his squad. But at this point, they've got to be really careful with these come-from-behind victories, especially when they run into University of South Florida and then University of Central Florida. We're late in the season, and despite your hard work and comebacks being your signature, fatigue is real. These girls are only human, so working hard late in games, late in the season, it makes me nervous for the Cougs, especially since the final meeting will be against Cincy later on in the season. Cincy already was able to win at Houston, and if they could find themselves in a deficit again, I don't know how that turns out. So I do give the edge to this one to the Cincinnati Bearcats, largely because of their style of play, but also they have home court.
A game that certainly could have some serious implications for the conference tournament come the end of the season. And speaking of the conference tournament, let's talk about some keys down the stretch. We're only 3 weeks away now. What do you think coaches are evaluating at this point in the year?
Well, I think the first thing on most coaches' minds, whether they want it to be or not, is just the health of your team. We keep talking about the duration of a season and fatigue, and all of those things are real. And I had a coach that used to say, are you hurt or are you injured? And at this point, everybody is a little bit hurt. So you want to make sure that your kids that are injured, if they are coming back or if they've been nursing an injury, you obviously have to make sure that they're healthy enough to stay on the floor without doing further damage. But as for the rest of your team, bumps, bruises, and aches are real. So maybe coaches are beginning to tweak how they practice. A few less sprints here, or maybe we do some more half-court sets here, watch a little bit more film, demand that everybody is taking the proper amount of time to make sure that their bodies are recovering. Then I think you're also always making sure that your team understands now is not the time to get out of character. You have to do what you do best. In the season, your character is pretty much established in terms of who you are as a team. So you really want to just stick with what you do best. Now's not the time to be trying to make a bunch of adjustments. I also think you have to protect your home court. Wins are hard to come by, and coaches will tell you that till they're blue in the face. But I think if you protect home, you give yourself the best opportunity. Now, as a player, I can always say, we should win the games that we're supposed to win, which may include some road games. I think coaches are a little bit more humble in terms of that approach, but more than anything, you protect your home court.
I know each game coming down the stretch here is extremely important, but if you had to pick one game this week to circle and for all fans to tune into, which one would it be?
Oh, man. Sunday, it's going down, Haley. USF, South Florida, will face their state rival, UCF, in Central Florida, in a game that features the 2 and 3 teams in the American. I think this is going to be a great game. I've got to stick with what I've been saying all season long. Despite the phenomenal performance from the Bulls against Ohio State, I do think, to our point, the Knights are able to hold on at home. They do some different things on defense. They have home court advantage. I think the UCF fans will show up in tow, obviously, because this also for them could be a very good win. Let's say that the Bulls have managed to climb in the rankings as things wind down later in the season and crack inside the teens. This is a win that ultimately not only helps the Knights in conference play, but could help them as far as tournament talk.
Who do you think is a player in that game that could have a serious impact on the outcome?
I'm going to go with Zakiya Saunders. I mean, she's been playing really well as of late for Coach Abe's team, and she has to keep it going. Now, what I do think is interesting, she may have to lean on some of her teammates a little bit more in terms of this being her first full year of play in the American, as she is a redshirt senior. But last year, she had an opportunity to watch it all unfold. And I think the way that she's been playing lately in terms of her aggressiveness, her distributing the ball, and just understanding the flow of the game puts her in a good position to really lead the charge for the Knights.
Monica, thanks again for your time joining us here today. Hard to believe, only 2 more episodes to go till we're at Mohegan Sun. It's flying by.
It's going to be exciting. Thanks, Haley.
All right, Monica, we'll see you next Monday. And as for all of you, thanks for tuning in. And for day-to-day coverage, don't forget you can always follow along on Twitter at American_WBB. Have a great rest of your week.